I'm no Graham Norton. So James Wade, Oxford Blues head coach. Thanks very much for giving up your time. Just thought it'd be cool just before next week with a big Varsity match, obviously coming up, 2019 edition. To sort of catch up. Obviously, team are sort of right, towards the end of preparations. Obviously, Coach Logic user as well. Just thought it'd be a real good opportunity to kind of find out a little bit about you, how the preparations have been going. Just with the build up to next week. So, without further ado, I'm going to put it straight back to you. If you could just sort of, just tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your rugby and coaching journey.
Okay, so I started off as an RFU development officer many, many years ago, but then ended up at Sale Sharks, at which point I went in and we set up the academy. And then the RFU came on, obviously the licensing agreements came in, so we then had the full academy at Sale. Was there for 10 years, and then ended up at Wasps, where I became first I was high performance manager and then head of recruitment. And in that time as well, I'd also been spent some time coaching with Frank Haddon when he was a Scotland coach. So I was a specialist coach with Frank. I'd done some stints in Russia as a specialist coach. And whilst I was at Sale towards my latter days, I worked on the skills side with Philippe Saint-André as well. So I ended up at Wasps, as I say, went back to Wasps, and at the same time their coaching opportunity came up because John Carter was the captain at Oxford and I'd known him from my Sale days. So he asked me if I fancied getting involved. Didn't really know too much about it. And so I said yes, did a couple of sessions and kept going back for the last 8 years, basically. So it's an incredibly different environment to a normal professional environment for many, many reasons. And probably those reasons are the cause of wanting to do it for so long, because it is incredibly exciting and different. It's far more rewarding in a way, I'd suggest, than being in the full professional environment for many reasons.
Cool. So you've been you've quite an extended coaching journey, I guess, as such. So you've seen, I suppose in some ways you've seen, obviously Oxford, they're not like a professional team as such, but you've seen like a real journey of professionalism within rugby as well. So
I remember in the early days with Philippe Saint-André, we had a VHS machine as and one of our guys used to literally be hitting the fast forward button and editing videotapes of the game. So it's come on massively. I know, now the pro clubs, they have a room full of guys, 2 or 3 guys in a room, and the academy's full analysis as well. Training's analysed, everything's analysed. Mm-hmm. And all the information is given to the players as numbers a lot of the time. And statistics, I suppose. Whereas at Oxford, we were starting from scratch. There wasn't anything at the time that when I went in, apart from, I suppose, going back to sort of that disc or a DVD of a game and putting that up on the big screen. So we've tried to develop as we've gone along with it. Not necessarily the biggest budget in the world and very, very few staff.
And so, that's interesting, because I guess the perception potentially might be that there is lots of budget and a big staff. So who else have you who else have you got supporting you in terms of getting the squad ready throughout the year?
We've got what we have is guest coaches who help us through that period. So Byron McGrigan has been fantastic. Obviously Scottish boy, and plays at Sale Sharks. So he's been down quite a few times working on our attack. We have a guy called Wayne Thompson who's at Hartbury College, who does our scrum. And we're very fortunate this year, Kinamile isn't able to play because he was one of our players and come from a huge professional environment in terms of Leeds, Sale, Wasps. But he's unable to play this year, so he's been doing our lineouts. And I just utilise people. I got Richard Wigglesworth coming in tomorrow, Friday morning, to do some plays with us. So I try and pick on people. I try and sort of contact people I know in its favours a lot of the time, to utilise their skills and bring them on board.
That's cool. That's exciting. Good for the squad, I guess, as well, to kind of.
Yeah, a lot of them are sort of in awe of these guys, and it's the Varsity, I suppose, 30, 40 years ago was very different to how it is now. You used to have internationals playing on a regular basis, doing some weird and wonderful degrees, I suppose, at times. But those situations have gone. Having said that, obviously we're playing this year against Flip van der Merwe and James Hall in the second row. So I think it's 99 caps between them and 63 as Australian captains. So yeah, they're the challenges you want as young lads coming into it.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll maybe come back onto the preparations and such in a minute, but be quite interesting just to kind of hear in terms of, I guess, throughout your sort of coaching career, who has influenced you and who does influence you potentially as a coach, or influence maybe the wrong word, but just you take lessons from. And
I think you take lessons from all of them. I've been really fortunate. Some of the people, going right back to when I played my rugby in South Wales, and there were the likes of Paul Turner, who was just this flamboyant player, and I know he ended up at Sale, but we didn't cross paths at Sale, crossed paths since. But the way that he approached the game, I suppose, was one way, and then I ended up at Sale Sharks, where you had people like Philippe Saint-André and Kingsley Jones, and you pick the goods and the bads out of those people as much as you can, I suppose, and you think, well, I can use that bit, or how have they spoken in that environment, and I suppose that's what I've tried to do. Then went down, and someone like Stephen Jones, I think when he was at Wasps, he wasn't there for long, but his whole attitude to work and the environment is something that I think we all at that time learned from. It's a guy, I think he had 106 caps, 3 British Lions tours, and his whole, you didn't know that. And I think that was the best part of him. And he came in with a smile on his face, win, lose or draw. And his job was to keep the players up. So obviously, technically, he was fantastic. But I think there are other elements to his coaching that you see less of sometimes.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. And so putting this back, asking you about your maybe influences. If I was to go and sit down with the squad at the moment, what kind of coach would the squad say you are? And in terms of just not type of coach maybe, but how would they sort of see you as a person, the type of way you would be going about with the squad and what have you?
Hopefully, this is hopefully, you don't know, do you? I think at the moment, because there's 23 in the squad and they've all been picked, they'd probably be quite complimentary of me. If you ask the 24th, 25th and 26th, then you get a very different response. But I'd hope it would be honest with them. And I think but that's the hard bit, is that sometimes you're too honest. Every player's comment is, we just want someone to be honest with us and tell us. And then as soon as the honesty has a negative connotation to it, they don't like that. So coping with that element, I think I'm definitely a different coach now than I was 8 years ago, because I'm aware of the reactions and how you got to deal with that in a far, far different way. I think when you come out of a professional environment, and it's getting worse, I think, from what I see and the dealings I have, is that players are pieces of meat, and it doesn't matter. They can come and go.
Yep. It's
a result that's the important bit. And at Oxford, it's about the experience and the journey. And I think we've all had to learn through that. So my job is to make sure that they learn as much as they can, they're prepared as best as possible, and they enjoy it.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess. You've got to enjoy it. It was interesting. The Scottish Schools Cup final was on yesterday, and went and spoke to a couple of the players And one of the players said, so 17-year-old said, well, if you enjoy it, then you'll perform. So I just want to go out and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Perform. So it was quite, I guess, quite nice maturity as well from a relatively young player. And I suppose with your squad of 23 as well, that it's something quite interesting is the language that you need to use. So obviously the language and how people will respond as well. So I'm guessing if you've got a bit of honesty, shall we say, for one of your squad, they're all going to respond differently, and that comes down to, you know, so those players, you'll be honest, and they will just take it on the chin and they'll crack on, whereas others maybe need a little bit more time to
100%. And you've got to prove your honesty. You've got to show them that you're there to help them as well at the same time. We've got to develop the players. We don't have a pool of players. Oxford's first 15 is very strong, but we're not like a, you know, there's universities that have sports courses and are traditionally sports universities that have 80, 90 players. We don't have that. So we have to, you have to get the best out of every player that you've got on site, and give them the best experience, because you want them to be, you want them to buy in to this, to what it's all about.
Yeah, okay. So that potentially then links on quite nicely. I was going to ask a little bit about, you were lucky enough to get out to Japan with the squad during the World Cup. So
yes,
how was that? What were the sort of, I guess, what were the benefits from the squad's perspective to having that extended time away together?
It's a tradition with us that we try and go on a tour every year, and I think it's a case of getting the boys to bond as quickly as possible. It's a 12-week, we got 12 weeks to get a team ready to play against internationals this year at Cambridge, and in such a big event. So the tour is something that bonds. We aim is a bonding experience, a cultural experience, and one that they, you know, we always say you have a reunion in 10 years' time at Twickenham at someone else's Varsity, and they're the memory. You will never remember. You won't remember the game. Next Thursday, the boys will not remember, you know, the pass or the tackle or whatever. When they see their mates, what they will remember is the social elements of what they did together. They'll remember that trip to Japan. They'll remember some of the things that we got up to in the karaoke bars, and they'll remember the game against Sydney Uni, not because of the game, but because of the changing rooms before, and the feeling after, and where we were at that time as a group. And I think that's what the tour is aimed at. That's why we have it. Japan turned out to be probably the most perfect environment for that. Culturally for us, the boys just had the most amazing time. And the Japanese, the way that they looked after us was fantastic. So I can't really, I can't complain about that in any way.
I think just a quick point on Japan, like we were lucky enough, sort of didn't quite overlap, but we were out during the World Cup with World Rugby, and we saw the Scotland-Japan game, and just I'd love to go back. Love to go back and have a little bit more time. The people that we met, the feel of that. It's hard. It's not very tangible, but the feel of the country. I think they just feel of the country.
What blew us away was their respect for each other. Their respect for you as a visitor, and then the respect for each other. And it just, at times, it was sort of, it really took you back. We stayed in a hotel. We stayed in the old Olympic Village, and then for 2 days the boys were billeted with families from Mitsubishi, and the way that their hospitality to the boys, and the way that was at the start of the tour, and the families were traveling for 2 hours or an hour and a half to come and watch the boys play at the end of the tour. They only spent 2 days, and it was like they were part of our family now, and the way that they talked about our lads was it was an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, I definitely think I've got some lessons that I've brought home in terms of, the way you treat people, I guess. I'd like to think I treat people well most of the time, if not all the time. But just definitely mindful of that. And I guess just to see off the Japan stuff, like what would be your abiding memory, if you had one that you could think of? It can be whatever type of memory you want.
Oh, the whiskey and soda night was quite interesting. But we had we we had a game where we played Waseda University the one day, and we had a reception afterwards, and we were singing some songs for the Waseda players and the committee and everything. And I don't think they'd been used to it as much. And one of their boys got up and did I've got a video of it actually, I'll send you the video. One of their boys got up and did We Are the Champions by Queen from the very start, playing the piano, the whole thing, the full Freddie Mercury. He was the tight head prop, and it's probably one of the best post-game songs I've ever seen. It was amazing. And so that whole afternoon was just great fun, because they were sort of sat back in amazement as our lads were doing these songs and doing these finds and having some fun, and they were very reserved. And then suddenly one of their boys thinks, right, I'll get into this. And he just took over. He was fantastic. Hence, we're trying to get him on a postgrad at Oxford so that he can entertain us for the next 4 years.
Sounds good. That's cool. That's like you say, memories you'll kind of we'll keep for life, I guess, as an individual and as a group. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So bringing things back to reality. How have the domestic preparations been going since you got back?
So we've had a really tough fixture list. In hindsight, maybe too tough, but we'll see. We played Croatia, which was fine. We beat them quite comfortably, and played the Army, who aren't strong this time of year. Navy, and then the Army didn't play us, but we played Navy. Then we played Bristol, Gloucester, and Northampton A-League,
right, okay.
Which were 3 weeks on the bounce. And Bristol's team was the strongest A-League team. I used to do the A-League at Wasp, used to do it at Sale. Comfortably the strongest A-League team I've seen. Their prop that they brought off the bench started 100 games for Bath in the Premiership.
Right, okay.
And I'm looking at our bench, and I've got a 19-year-old student who's just come out of school. I'm like,
I guess you've got university to learn, right? So
yes, yeah, they certainly learned that day. And it was strange because it was very much university. It was us against. We played it away. I think they had more coaches than we had players watching the game. They had cameras from every angle. They had 4 physios and 2 doctors, and the whole thing. And that's what they should have. If you've got that funding, you take advantage of it. But at the same time, it was good for us to see some of our boys to play against that. And it's where, without sounding too whatever, it's where things like Coach Logic have helped us, because we got the copies of the game, we loaded them up. And I don't know what a team like Bristol will have got out of that the other side, because it was one-sided, obviously. Mm-hmm. But we were able to analyse in a huge way the simple mistakes that we were making, and how we made them we were under pressure, so we were making more and more. And that folded onto Gloucester, it folded onto Northampton, where we were improving, because although we will tag and we will show the issues that we're having, a lot of the time they're themes. So our defensive themes were able to be shown, but the boys were able to communicate. And I think it was about then that they really got into the system of communicating with each other, communicating with me on the system, and it made our sessions so much clearer, if you like, in terms of what we were trying to achieve. It meant that our line-out sessions and our analysis of those sessions were able to. We're not about thrown 10, lost 2. Oh, we've had an 80% line-out. Mm-hmm. We're just on about how we're going to improve the players technically and their ability, because there's more than one reason why you lose a line-out. So sometimes it is the opposition. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is the fact that you couldn't stand up straight because the wind was that horrendous. So what were we doing to those sorts of things were can be drawn out, and it's made things a lot clearer for the lads, I think, in what we're trying to do. And I know I'm talking all this stuff now, but in terms of coach logic, one of the biggest things that we changed was we had a session where in the old pavilion, and we said, right, you know, from now on, you've got to highlight rather than me highlight the mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
you have got to highlight the mistakes and send to all.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was a big honesty call.
Yeah.
And it was players holding their hands up and going, I did this. This is my fault.
Uh-huh.
I need to work on it. And that's had, as an honesty, that's had the largest effect on what we were trying to achieve.
That's cool. So yeah, so the players, just taking a bit of responsibility. And does that has that then folded over a little bit into the players, I guess, identifying some stuff, stuff that's gone well. So, that sort of success leaves clues type idea. Is that sort of started?
Yes, 100%. And I think the only thing with that is every coach is guilty of this, is that it's like when you have a player-led environment. Mm-hmm. At Oxford it's a player-led club. It's run by the players. And when you start looking at the situations of having players hold their hands up, but also having players have input into things, it's quite, as a coach, you've got to, you at times feel very vulnerable in terms of, well, what am I here for? Because sometimes I will I will point something out, and it's all right. We've sorted, sort of thing. And it's like, right, okay, well, show me what you've sorted, and then they'll go through it and they'll explain, and that's fine. And I think you've got to. It takes a long time to have that ability. In my opinion, to be able to stand back and go, right, guys, you've got to identify. If they were missing things, I'd highlight them. But I think you've got to have that ability to let the players take over sometimes, because it makes them. I'm not on about run sessions. I'm not on about the game plan as such. I'm purely on about highlighting when they do things well and positively. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can have video session, where you don't really have to say a lot. And the hardest part of that is you thinking, when you haven't said a lot, excuse my French, oh shit, what am I here for? Because well, I'm meant to be doing this, or I'm meant to tell them what's right and wrong. Yeah. If they've told you, that's fine. You've just got to let them get on with it. And the system does that. The system is easiest system that I've come across to it. And going right back to when I started, I talked about, early on I said about the VHS machine, but then suddenly it went to a couple of guys in a room, and they give you everything. Yeah. They gave you all the clips. They gave you all the stats. They gave you all those things you went away with. And I realized pretty quickly, I didn't know how to use a system. Yeah. Okay. I had no system. And so it was a bit like, I'm sure if you went to a director or a head coach at a Premiership club now and said, go on, then you use the system yourself. They've got 3 or 4 people doing it for them. Mm-hmm. So how this system works is, 1, there's the ease of use, but 2, then to use it properly, in my opinion, we've just tagged the game. I think there's 80, 90 tags in it, but who's using it for what, and who's using those areas? We're learning as a group what's relative to each department and each unit of the club. And so that's, I suppose, without waffling too much, is why it's been so beneficial for us.
Yeah, that's cool. Because I guess even if it's a player-led environment, and you take that specifically around about video, but if someone's saying, have a look at this specific clip, and then tell me what you saw, well, the players might have gone and found something totally different. And it's also very powerful to get the players involved. But if you're then still saying, well, this is what I want you to look at, it's in a way, it's a guided question in a roundabout sort of way, isn't it? So it's interesting.
Yes. And you've got to there are boundaries, because otherwise they do get carried away. And I want to do this and this, and it's like, well, that's fine. And But
I
you'd
guess
be
that's
amazed
where
how
it
much
comes to
you know.
skill, your sort of experience, knowledge, skill as a coach comes into play as well, isn't it? At that point, rather than
Yeah.
you sitting, it's not great use of your time to sit down and push buttons.
No,
That's not.
and that's why it's been
coaching.
great, because their messages are all coming in. I've just uploaded. I don't know if I should say it's Wales v Barbarians.
Right. Okay.
Asked them to look at a certain time period and come back to me as to their thoughts, because there's certain bits in that I really liked, and I know my phone's going to start beeping soon with their comments on it, and it's great because it means that when I go to training, I can go, right, we saw that. What do we think when we're on the pitch? Let's run it. Let's try this. Let's try this, and go with that.
And I guess you're learning as well about your players and what you've got a perception. Ask the question, Ellie, what's their perception of you? You've probably got a perception of how much they know, and actually it's a really good way to find out what they do know and where they are at and what the challenges
another way of
are that they're
learning.
facing.
Some of them some of them love you to write it down.
Yeah.
They want it on a piece of paper. Some of them want to do it. Some of them want to, we do the VART test with the boys to see their learning styles.
Yeah, okay.
But they love, I know they've all gone for a lunch this afternoon. And I know that they'll all be around, going all right on the phone and looking at things on the phone from the games for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And that's why it's great. Cheers,
right,
pal.
good talking. Cheers, bye.
And you, mate. See you later. Bye.
Bye.